Welcome to the Autonomy Project.
The Autonomy Project is the definitive podcast for PDA homeschooling, following one family's real-time journey as they build a food pop-up and embrace a radical, self-directed approach to education.
This week was better. Our sleep schedule is repaired. Tuesday was my son's birthday. We had some good momentum that happened on Monday. His birthday was tough. We'll get into family issues later. It was a pretty big disappointment, and he was sad. So we didn't get much school done for 2 or 3 days. We hopped back on and continued with lessons that don't trigger him. As the week went on, it became more apparent as I provided the school with more input and detail. And I was in touch with our lawyer again. I'm not sure what's happening. I'm not looking forward to this IEP meeting. The IEP is not acceptable. And we'll take a look at that in the next public school segment in my public school diary. But yeah, it was just a tough week, centered around repairing the relationship between myself and my son, and sort of stepping away from trying to get someone to understand our needs and validate that my issues will be addressed. This week certainly did feel a lot better, and we're sleeping again. So, small victories. Let's move on to the next segment. I'm anxious to review some of the materials I made surrounding my concerns about my son's future at this school. Hello, and welcome to the week I lost my patience entirely with the public school system. So after receiving nothing but phone calls in spite of my accommodation of email or Zoom only from my son's special education case manager, and countless phone calls from teachers who had also not only not gotten the memo, but not gotten the memo that my son has an IEP or what his accommodations are. And this is something I've had a lawyer say happens, I've had students say happens, and my son has expressed these IEPs are just for us to feel better in the meeting. Teachers do what they do, and accommodations around things like sensory items or extra breaks are rarely honored, right? So with that in mind, let's put this in some context. I've been advocating for my son in IEP meetings for years. This is our 3rd year at the school, and I am not new to these people. Last year, at the last meeting I attended, I made it very clear in a very aggressive manner that applied behavior analysis and behaviorism in general was considered in my family culture abusive. I cited the studies, Department of Defense study that showed ABA to be ineffective at best and harmful in the worst case scenario. And I cited, personal resources and my work as a peer support specialist a few years ago. Nonetheless, I was getting nothing but lip service when I had a very vocal meltdown. And when I melt down, it's more like into hyperlexia, right? So it was like a huge info dump on... okay, the lady didn't have the IEP, obviously, or she didn't read it, or whatever. So she's got my info now, and I asked her to schedule something with me. So I imagine I'll hear back from her. I go into recording on Thursday, have a full day of recording with my other podcast, go in the evening to do some school with my son and to check my email. And I have missed calls when I turned my phone back on from my son's teacher, who had scheduled me for a meeting at 9:30 that morning without informing me. I wasn't available. So, at this point, I'm really ticked off. And I'm like, hey, look, scheduling to me is a two-way street, and I'm not available. Then I sent my scheduling link, and it was ignored for several days. The following week, I think Tuesday of week 4, this week that we're talking about, the teacher finally used the scheduling link to set an appointment. So the next week, it was my son's birthday. So we actually I gave up on all of the really frustrating subjects. I let him get through the fun subjects he likes that didn't feel like torture to him. And we started chugging along, doing 9, 10 assignments in one day. So Friday morning comes. Now it's actually this Friday of week 4. The teacher has sent along an IEP, which I'm going to go over with you in the next section of this video. We'll get there. The IEP is offensive to me. It shows absolutely nothing that was in it last year that I fought for with a lawyer. It's completely changed. And it is basically ABA. And I am fuming. And then, as I'm preparing for the meeting, I go into my calendar and I see that she has shared this meeting, this welcome call. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to ask this woman about ABA in a positive manner and trick her into telling the truth, because I don't think she should be on my son's case. This is all behaviorism. She's probably a BCBA, and that's why we're not connecting, right? I look at the appointment, which is the scope was for a welcome call with me and his teacher, a get-to-know-you welcome call. There's 3 admin that she's gone ahead and invited to this meeting, which is now a formal meeting. So I canceled it right away this morning, and I let them know I was scheduled for a welcome call. I offered her a time slot for a welcome call, and that formal meetings of this nature with multiple special ed supervisors require the presence of a lawyer or a support person for me. I am fucking done. Let's go over what I saw. Remember everything I just told you? I've advocated for years for my son. We use a system called collaborative proactive solutions. It's directly undermined by the principles of behaviorism, and I hired a lawyer so that no principles of applied behavior analysis or behaviorism would make it into my son's IEP, further distressing him and compounding the symptoms and the mood disorder we have presenting at home. Move on to the next section of the video, and we will discuss what I received. So the IEP itself and this report that I'm pulling this from has my son's name on it. But I'm going to screenshot some of the highlights. As you can see, my no behaviorism IEP that I hired a lawyer to have written is 75% ABA. I said absolutely no ABA. I expressed my offense. I said how closely I actually likened my avoidance of behaviorism to a religious rite. I said it is more dear to me than most people hold the religions that they practice. And this is harmful, and I don't want it anywhere near my son. 75% ABA. It's basically an ABA plan for some fidget spinners. I am not playing. I am not happy. As you can see, the entire plan follows an ABA framework exactly, including things I spent so much time and energy and honestly filled with cortisol and so angry that I had to say it again and again, feeling shame, feeling less than, feeling like said, you are using language that to me is as offensive as language like colored and inferior must have felt like to black people during segregation. Okay? I'm in no way, I'm from South Philly, I'm in no way showing up, getting triggered by language, and not saying my piece. So what I see here is an act of aggression, okay? I don't care what sort of language they use to manage this level of incompetence and invalidation, but it's a lie, because the words right here are an act of aggression to anybody that was in a room with me advocating for my son, or a meeting with me advocating for my son over the last 5 years, including 2 at this school. And I am finished. I am livid. As you can see, my no behavior requested IEP was completely based on the framework of applied behavior analysis. I can identify behaviorism. It's not good. A system of and educated and advocated on. Here's some harmful, ineffective, not what I asked for, not what I wrote about, not what I spoke about, not what I advocated for. Why would they would I would be fine if they said I don't think this is but instead they lied to me in a manner that is so insulting that it really makes me want to waste energy I don't have retaliating in some manner. I have to go meditate out the South Philly Italian from me, okay? Because I don't have time for this. I have to build a positive new future for me and my son, and make a homeschool application as soon as possible, because there's no way I'm spending another year with these vampires. The unfortunate truth is, I should have known everything I needed to know when his special ed teacher wouldn't meet with me without her supervisor. My concern is that you're going to walk all over my disabled little boy, and your answer is to show up with your boss in the meeting? If you don't trust yourself with a disabled adult to say the wrong thing, I don't trust you alone with a disabled child when you're in a position of power. Special ed teachers make themselves out to be people who are advocates for the disabled, but I have seen some of the cruelest, most ableist, unacceptable, dehumanizing behavior from the special education sector than I have ever seen, ever, in all my years as a bartender on South Street in South Philly. I am so not done because I was so pissed off about all the behaviorism and, like, in the document they mentioned specifically like an ABA based approach to assess behavior, and so I saw red, right? And so I put a few of the recurring things that happen throughout the years there, and just in general I think this list will be very familiar to a lot of people. These are common frustrations. ABA framework. So we're going to do behavioral analysis of the school district's treatment of a PDA family. So I clearly stated many times ABA is harmful, and I requested My son only received neuro-affirming practices. We talked about the IEP. 75% of the IEP was rooted in traditional behaviorism. In fact, one part of the assessment you didn't see was that the IEP was pretty average. Like, all my advocating was nothing. It was just like a normal everyday IEP for an autistic kid. Like, nothing I said was listened to. It was performative to make me feel heard, in my opinion. Okay? This is all just feelings, opinions. Remember, these are journals. This is a diary entry. This is a look into what it's like parenting from a PDA mindset viewpoint for a PDA in service of a PDA viewpoint. So your results may vary. Next, I assessed their communication protocols. I requested communication via email or Zoom only, with no calls to home, many times, including with a lawyer by my side last year. The admins and the teacher repeatedly made phone calls. They ignored my boundary. They forgot, right? This is, I believe, the equivalent of saying something hurtful and then just kidding, because it's funny for everyone else, right? I don't fit the culture. That's okay. I have a need. Disability or not, people should be able to have needs. That's it. This is, it erodes trust. There's a clear violation of my boundaries. And because I'm PDA, that triggers this sort of anxiety that keeps me from interacting in a meaningful way with the school and our support people. So the IEP implementation, every year I hear not only my children, but children far and wide, and professionals working to represent children whose civil rights might have been violated also hear this very common, that as far as IPs go, what you can guarantee is they'll receive like contracted services like speech or ABA or anything else that's in their IEP, but they won't necessarily get the accommodations like the ones that were neuro-affirming, that 25% that I fought for that had become common to include. A lot of teachers won't accommodate them based on their personal viewpoints, and nobody advocates for the child. The child can't advocate for themselves. And a lot of the teachers, my personal experience has been no teacher has ever known his accommodations before I mentioned he has an IEP and what they are. Okay? Including this year. Not a single teacher. Everybody was warm and kind. And it's really interesting because I get the warmest reception from the science teacher, of course, because my approach is data-driven. I love being seen in a process, right? It's a way I feel seen. I could tell she was genuinely enthusiastic about viewing my presentations. Yeah, but it's, again, this, forcing the kid or the parent to advocate for themselves. And it's a constant menace, this, what's on paper and what's in practice. I'm hearing kids say it rarely matches. Moving on. The meeting transparency. So back when I was exploring communication styles, and ultimately I can link to a book I wrote about this, I was trying to give voice to like this feeling I had. I ended up calling it neurocognitive coercion. It's sort of a subtle form of passive abuse that happens on a social level and is seen it's cloaked in caring, right? And so I sort of spent a whole ebook exploring this sort of microaggression, right? These little things, as somebody who has an autonomic nervous system disorder that is heavily dependent on how fatigued I am, how stressed I am, what sort of chemicals my body is producing in reaction to its environment. I'm acutely aware of the fact that the old adage, death by 1,000 paper cuts, is what happens to people like me when we lose our social skills or we have to take a hiatus from burnout. So this level of malicious compliance or just a corporate culture that doesn't prioritize the needs of these students and the teacher's responsibility to have those accommodations reviewed, known before each class, in mind, maybe listed next to their desk. Like, it's an online school. Why can't they use AI to create a list of accommodations for all the students in attendance each time a teacher signs on to teach a live lesson, for example, right? Or every time a teacher opens up an assignment from a child to grade it, their accommodations can be right there on the screen in a box somewhere. So they're reminded, or even built into the software. The teacher might not be able to deduct points for certain things because the AI knows the child's accommodations. There's no investment into the tech that does this. There's no investment. Again, do the actions match the words? I'm looking at this from the back end. No investment into these kids. And there won't be as narratives continue to become more damaging about variety in the human genome. So moving on. I want to be able, I right away identified gaslighting. One of the ways I did it was recording conversations. When these note takers came out, I right away downloaded one, and I was requesting Zoom meetings, and I was requesting to have notes taken, and even sometimes recordings by my AI assistant. That made a world of difference. People do and say things a lot differently when they know they'll be accountable for their words verbatim later on. And so at this point, I feel very uncomfortable when somebody pushes back on that. From the beginning, the school has not let a single thing be recorded at all. And I was so uncomfortable with that. So uncomfortable with my son sitting on one-on-ones and being really uncomfortable with the behaviorism that we discussed earlier in this video being applied to him and not having the words and just eloping from the session. And his teacher would also treat me very firmly. So I am mirroring that behavior this year. I got it. Okay. Thank you. Now I understand, and my boundaries are internal because I don't want to lose this energy I got back. I don't want to go back into a flare. I'm feeling better. I'm gaining muscle. My physical therapy is working. I'm gaining flexibility. My pain is lower. It's crazy. These people can't change their social mores so that I don't have to be in chronic pain around them. We live in a crazy world. Anyway, ending with a welcome call. This also happened last year, and I had the same exact reaction, which wasn't noted. My needs weren't noted. My offense at this wasn't noted. And I educated about this last year, too. I requested a video call. I requested an ADA accommodation. That, instead of going right from the one-on-one that I was ambushed with should have equally transferred. One-on-one Zoom. I just needed a Zoom. Audio processing differences. That triggered an escalation. I am so not done because I was so pissed off about all the behaviorism and, like, in the document they mentioned specifically, like, an ABA based approach to assess behavior. And so I saw red, right? And so I put a few of the recurring...
Okay, team, let's talk about our next big project.
We're serving takoyaki and sandwiches made on fresh-baked Japanese milk bread. We're working on menu planning, kitchen skills, food safety, and food cost.
We're looking at week 4 of our project-based learning. The week begins with a look at some more indoor sprout gardening. Here we see our broccoli sprout seeds in the early stages of germination inside a glass jar. You can see the fine, fuzzy root hairs extending from the seeds. Later, the sprouts have developed and turned green, but Nicole and her son still have some more moisture that would be ideal. They will continue to work to refine their process. This week, they moved gently back into the kitchen, experimenting with roll techniques, making pull-aparts and burger buns. They also into some model magic and paints for fine motor practice. And they had fun practicing some playful food styling.